Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. And we're here with the executive producer. And she demands that we call the show now Huck TV. Pretty cocky, but we'll do what she wants. This is Huck TV. And Huck has been a great girl. Yes, a great girl. Rub my ears, Dad. She all of a sudden started breathing heavy. She loves that. Good girl. Good girl. Oh, Dad, you're a good girl. Oh, yeah, Dad. Oh, I love that. Yes, a good puppy. Dad's a good girl. She's a good girl. She'll be hanging out with us for the majority of the show here. And I thank you for being here, because without you, there would be no show. So, thank you. And we're getting close to Christmas. I thought I'd talk a little bit about Christmas. Some of you just want to hear missing people, and I'm going to talk about two of them today. But it's nice to get to know people. I like to read about you. I read your stories all the time. A little bit about me that you may not know. So when I was younger, the big thing at the Paulides house was tradition. What I mean by that is we had my dad's sister lived in San Jose. We lived in Cupertino, just right next door. So we'd be hanging around with the Dellas all the time. Rick, Ruthie, and Randy, and great family. We did all of our holidays together. Each had a pool, so we'd go over to one other's house and have a barbecue in a pool. The next time go to the other's house. It was an awesome way to grow up. But one of the other things that we always had a dog. And this is Mishka. Now Mishka in Russian is bear. And she looked like a bear. The coloring above her head, and the nicest dog you will ever meet. There wasn't an ounce of anger in her. She just loved being around us, and she had her own little mat on the floor, and we'd go over there and roll around with her, and she'd lay on top of us. And great dog. Now, this is Christmas at my aunt's house. I was probably about 22 or 23 then. And I just opened a present. And the rules were at our Christmas is everybody had to buy a Christmas present for everybody else. And there's like 15, 16 people. The cost was not important. It was the thought. And everybody had to open their presents, buy them. Everybody watched everybody open their own presents. So it was a slow process. You bring cookies and drinks, and it went on forever. It was a blast because everyone made fun of each other. It was a good time. So one of those holidays, I'm going to talk about it real quick. This is my cousin, Randy Della. Randy, the nicest guy you'll ever meet. We went fishing together so much. And just a good soul, super smart. He and his wife and his girls lived in Boise. And this is a long time ago now. He was a young man. He had to take a trip to Asia. And he was working for HP. And he came back, and the day he came back, he was exhausted and slightly overweight, and he had a stroke and he died. And oh my gosh, that just tore up the family so bad because he was so young and he had young girls, and oh, it was just horrible. But it kept our family so close. And we had so many good times with Randy. It's horrible. And then one last photo. This was my backyard when we were growing up. My dad was fireman full-time, and since he only worked one day, he had 2 days off, 1 day, 2 days off. He became a contractor, and he actually built our pool, and he built a lot of things. And This is Mishka in the backyard. Great dog. And that's where I got my love of dogs, just because I grew up with them. They were so naturally loving, and they would always love you. They would always love you. You know, friends come and go, girlfriends come and go, but dogs will always be there for you. And I swear, and I'm not just saying this, Huck can tell my moods. Like if I'm just sitting there sometimes, Great Pyrenees aren't real affectionate, but she'll come over and she'll just nudge me with her nose like, hey, get your mind on something else, like scratch my nose or scratch my head. And it's amazing. Dogs are amazing. I know cats are amazing too. And we had a cat growing up too, so I get that. Now we're going to talk about a couple of cases today. And one of them is a national park case. And the man's name was Timothy Lynch. We're missing June 6, 2003. 44 years old when he disappeared at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. And you think that's an odd place. That's what I thought too when I read the story. He was raised in Ohio. He was married and he lived in Newburgh, Indiana. I know a lot of you like knowing birth dates. I happened to get this one. It was April 12th, 1959. He had a hobby that he was passionate about, and that is photography, which is the reason he went to Hawaii alone just to photograph the volcano. It was his lifelong dream to get to Hawaii and see the lava, and that's why his wife let him go. Now he stayed on the Big Island in a hotel, got a rental car, and toured various spots for a week, taking photographs, loving it, having a great time. Told his wife that he may stay over if the trip's good and he has saved enough money. But on June 6th was his tentative checkout date. He had a ticket to fly home that day, and he didn't change it. And then he wanted to go one last time to his favorite spot to photograph. So he had the hotel hold his bags, and he took his rental car out to this spot. Now, some of you don't know. Hotels have a room at the hotel specifically to hold baggage. Every good hotel has this. And they'll tag your bag, and they lock it, and it's secure. And I've done this so many times when I've had to go to business meetings and things. I didn't want to drag around my bags. Well, he told the hotel to hold me, be back later in the day. Early in the morning, takes off, and he goes to a place called Chain of Craters Road. Chain of Craters Road. And he parks. And this is sort of a drop-off point for people in cars to hike in, to see the lava. You can't get really close, but you can see the lava and smoke, and very picturesque. Well, family was waiting for him to get home. He didn't get home. They called the hotel. They said they think he checked out, but his baggage was still there. Checked the airline. He didn't get on the plane. So they started to get a little nervous. Eventually, they call him in as a missing person. Family tells the National Park Service and Hawaii State Police that he was big on photography and you probably should be checking the parks for his rental car. So they get the description and the license plate number of the rental car. On June 13th, the National Park Service finds his rental car, parked as it should be, on that Chain of Craters Road, near the trailhead with some other parked cars. But they look at it and they can see it's been parked here for quite a while, collecting dust and things. And they imagine that it had been parked there since June 6th. Well, the next day, the NPS gets authority to call out a full search and rescue. So they get 2 helicopters. There's actually a fire caused by the lava flow in one part of the park, and they had a firefighting helicopter dumping water on plants and things, putting out small fires. And then they also had a private helicopter that came in to search for Timothy. And then they had 20 ground pounders from the National Park Service there that were taking the area around the car, down the trail, off the trail, and looking. They didn't find anything. The next day, June 15th, search and rescue continues, more intensive. Timothy was in good shape. Again, his focus was on photography. So the Park Service brought in a couple of mountain climbing experts, and they were rappelling down into areas that they just thought maybe he fell into it, or they were trying to cover all their bases. And the helicopters flying over the scene didn't see anything unusual. And the ground pounders stayed on site, not finding anything. June 15th at 9 a.m., search is still going on for Timothy, but at 9 a.m., a company called Tropical Helicopters was at the airport in Hawaii, the Big Island, and they were loading their Hughes 500D sightseeing helicopter for a 45-minute tour of the island. These went on all day, every hour. Well, they eventually got it fueled, got the people on the flight, got everything going, and they took off at approximately 9:25. 31 minutes into the flight, at 9:58 a.m., a Park Service search and rescue helicopter in that area by Chain of Craters. Here's Russell Holliday, the pilot of the Tropical helicopter, quickly call over the radio, "Mayday, Mayday, engine failure." And he calls out a location. In the background, the search and rescue pilot says he heard the beep, beep, beep of the engine failure on the helicopter. And he knew approximately where he was, and they started to fly towards the scene. Now, Russell, the pilot, lived in Kona, and was from Puyallup, Washington. Now, this is an area I know really well in Washington because of various things I've done. But Russell had 3,000 hours of flight time and 150 hours on that helicopter in the last 6 months. He was a very experienced pilot. Well, as the National Park Service chopper hears the Mayday, they immediately start flying towards the area. They go over a small ridge, and they see the Hughes 500D on the ground in flames like it had crashed. The National Park Service helicopter calls for the firefighting helicopter, which is just a couple miles away, to get a bucket and come over here. They get a bucket full of water, and they make 12 drops on that crashed helicopter. Russell, the pilot, and 3 passengers all died of their burns. The 2 search helicopters were in the area. Why? Because Timothy was missing. The crash happened just 2 miles from Timothy's car. Now, I went back and I searched, and I found the cause of that helicopter crash was a small piece in the engine failed. There was really nothing Russell could do. And I also read that just the Friday before that crash, that Tropical helicopter went through its 100-hour inspection and passed. Now, the search for Timothy went on for a full week. This is the best picture I could come up with for Timothy. Now, for people that have followed me for a while, you know that many, many, many times aircraft crash in conjunction with one of the 411 searches. And here it happened again. This is a brand new case. We just found it. Even though it's an old case, we just found it. But it's another crash in association with a search. Very close in proximity when you consider the size of the island of Hawaii. So this is a picture of the crash site. This is Chain of Craters Road, where Timothy parked. Distance from here to here, 2 miles. Just upslope from where he disappeared. I mean, from where the car was parked. And three people and the pilot were killed. And here's the island of Hawaii, and there's the detailed area of what happened. Now, interestingly, Park Service said that lava flow was coming off that mountain at a point where they actually had to get that crashed helicopter out of there. It was going to be enveloped by lava. And the helicopter owner of the company came out, picked up the helicopter with other helicopters and got it out. And then the FAA and NTSB did their investigation. I find it puzzling because the disappearance happened in 2003. Mrs. Lynch got a court to declare Timothy was deceased in 2005. So, he's no longer missing. He's not on any missing logs. When you want to know, well, how many people have disappeared in this area? Well, not Timothy, because he's dead. So he's not on any missing logs. And you see how this game works? If we ever get the Park Service to cooperate and tell us how many people have disappeared over the course of so many years, and you have to use specific language, because if you just say, well, how many people are missing in Yosemite National Park? Well, they're not going to tell you all that have disappeared in the last 100 years. Because no, they're presumed deceased. Just like Timothy, presumed dead. That's why it's hard to get good data out of the Park Service. So that's a very fascinating case to us. The next case, we're going to skip across North America and we're going to go into Canada, just north of northern Michigan, and a man named Bernard Bob Hillman. A case we've never talked about before. It's not in any of our books. Super smart man. It's Bob. 37 years old, went missing October 7th, 1964. USA citizen, Marine Corps vet. He lived in Grand Rapids. And he was employed as an analyst at the city's power plant. He's married, and he had 3 boys. He was described as an extremely experienced outdoorsman. He had advanced survival training in the Marines, and he had hunted with relatives since he was a young boy. And he liked the challenge and the dangers and the extremes that go along with hunting, which brought him to Alaska to hunt just a couple years before this incident. So this is the U.S.-Canadian border. This is Lake Superior Provincial Park. This is Lake Superior. Just to refresh your memory, Michigan's down here, the upper peninsula of Michigan. And this is where some Air Force jets were scrambled when Canada reported a UFO going out over Lake Superior. That scrambled jet merged with the UFO, disappeared. I did a video about it. 2 pilots gone, never found, jet never found. This area of Canada has many hunters that have been missing over the years. Mostly moose hunters. And we're getting to that point now where people know I've talked about elk hunters a lot. And now almost moose hunters remind me of elk hunters. Now there's many more elk hunters missing than moose hunters, but it's probably a population thing because of so many people that go elk hunting versus moose. Now, a moose is huge. It's like a horse. The meat coming off of one moose could feed a family all year. Right? It's huge. So, a very valuable commodity to get. Well, in September of '64, Bob and a work associate at the power plant named James Titima started to organize a moose hunting trip. Both knew the outdoors super well, and both had a lot of experience, and they wanted to go get a moose. So they planned it, and October 5th, 1964, Bob and James both got time off together from the Port Sheldon power plant, and they took a drive up into Canada and arranged to have a bush plane to fly them into a place called Lake Tomtit. Now, 8 miles from the camp that they established on the lake was a RCAF base. Now, temps at night got down to about 9 degrees or cooler. Lake Tomtit was just big enough, and it's a small lake, just big enough to get a plane into land. Now, just west of the lake was a large pulpwood mill, and on the north end of the lake was a large flooded area that had been caused by some beavers. So once again, like I said, the lake is right near a place called White River. And if you can see, it's all water out here. Lots of lakes, ponds. Remember what I always told you about areas like this? Yeah, lots of disappearances. Well, October 6th, the guys just got into camp, and they were starting to set things up. And before it got dark, they wanted to make one attempt to get out into the woods, take a look around, maybe see if they could find anything. So James said that he last saw Bob putting on the warm coat, putting some matches in his pocket, grabbing his rifle, extra ammunition, and said that he'd be back before dusk. And so they both went separate ways to hunt. Later that night, as it was getting dark, James shows up back at camp. Bob's not there. Well, this is way before satellite phones and advanced communications, and James really didn't know quite where they were, but he knew because of the smoke's coming from an area where the pulp mill was at that there'd be people there. So he waited till the next morning, and Bob didn't show up. So he made a treacherous hike over to the pulp mill to get help. There, the crew had somebody go in and get RCMP to come back out and meet with them, and they did. James explained that Bob is a super experienced hunter. Heck, he may even be back at camp by now. He had matches. He was wearing warm clothes. So the RCMP goes with James back to the camp, and Bob's not there. So the RCMP makes a call and says, we've got to do a full call up for this because at night's getting down to 9 degrees is way too cold. Well, the next day, on October 7th, the RCMP arrive in force. They bring canines, and they bring a helicopter. They have one fly in from the local Air Force base I told you about 8 miles away. Now, the dogs and the helicopter search that whole area for the entire day. They come up with nothing. Dogs couldn't come up with a scent trail. Helicopter didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Flew low and hard, nothing. At the same time, one of the other RCMP officers went into the White River and they contacted Bob's family. The family contacted the power plant. The power plant people that were military people called the U.S. Air Force. And the Air Force, because Bob was a veteran, flew a helicopter north up into Canada with Canadian approval to help search for this veteran. That was something outstanding. I don't hear about this very often, but when it does happen, that's awesome. So now you got a U.S. helicopter up there looking, you got Canadian helicopters, you got dogs, and you got ground pounders. On October 9th, the hunting guides that were in the area all agreed en masse to stop. Now, hunting season in Canada is not that long. And so every time that these guides stop, they're not making money. They didn't care. This is really what I call sportsmanship, when you start looking for other people and you know you're going to be losing your money. Well, almost 20 guides showed up with 20 RCMP officers, canines, 2 military helicopters now. Still not finding anything. October 10th, surprise to everybody. 6 men from the power plant that Bob and James worked at showed up, and they got flown into that same lake that that Bob disappeared on. They surprised everybody. They brought their own stuff, planned to stay a week. They said they weren't going to stop until they found him. That's friendship, folks. That is friendship. That's on their own money and on their own time. The power plant said that they'd go with a skeleton crew, but they had to find Bob. Well, the RCMP questioned James. He said that they arrived and were setting up camp when Bob made the idea, hey, let's go out and try to hunt before it gets too late. He pointed the direction that Bob went, and he says, I just went in a different direction so we wouldn't cover the same ground. He said, I never gave it a second thought. Bob was wearing warm clothes. He had matches. He had his rifle. No reason to be concerned. It was a great day and everything was going well. Now, as the search went on, the weather continued to deteriorate. It got colder, snow flurries. It got bad. One Canadian article I read said the following. I'm going to read it to you. The reporter said that one Canadian source said several hunters annually just disappear in this desolate region of Canada, which consists of hundreds of miles of dense forest. And that word just disappear was highlighted. Now the search and rescue went all the way till October 20th, which is quite an effort for being such a desolate area. The men from the power plant went back to work. The official reason for terminating the search was snow and cold. Bob was never found. And again, moose hunters are like elk hunters. Now let's pretend that this happened today. Well, first of all, you have personal locator beacons. You have them on your phones nowadays, and you can buy one separately. If you're a spouse of a hunter, this is what you get them for Christmas. A personal locator beacon. You can find them on Amazon. Don't buy one that costs a monthly fee. You don't need that unless you want to communicate with them by text over that personal locator beacon. The personal locator beacon sends a signal up to a satellite, not a cell tower, a satellite. That goes down to National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, and they look at the GPS coordinates and call out the search and rescue in that area, and they'll find you within 10 feet. It's great technology. It's saved a lot of people over the years, and I'm being factual with you. Now, am I saying it's going to save everybody? Well, no, and there's been a couple of instances where people weren't found, but if it was my dad, my brother, my son out there hunting, I would get them that for sure. Hunters tend to spend a lot of money on their rifles and clothes. Oh, I don't need that. It's never going to happen to me. I don't need that locator beacon crap, you know. Yeah, you don't need it until you're about freezing out there and you think, should have bought it. Now, Huck's laying here thinking, Dad, I don't need a personal locator beacon. Yeah, she's got 2 layers of coat. We were out in the snow today. She was laying down and I was cleaning part of the driveway off, and she's just laying right in the snow. She loves putting her belly on the snow. She just lay there and look. She'd lay there all day. She's looking at me going, yeah, that's right, Dad. All right. So that's my little story for today, and a few pictures from the past. Hope I didn't get anybody angry by not starting right off and going into the stories. But those are the stories for today. As I keep telling you, this is the kindness revolution. Nothing about kindness costs money. Smiles, friendship, understanding, patience. Those are the keys. Just a simple smile will take you miles. Thanks for being here, folks. I greatly appreciate you. Remember, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you get notifications. And I post every other day. And just the other day, I posted a list of all the videos I've done, and I grouped them up by headers. Amnesia, national parks. Yeah. And they're under the first comment in my previous videos. You want to see that? Be safe, be kind. Paulides out.